Hi everyone, welcome to Online Piano Learning. My name is Sarah. I'm a pianist and piano teacher. If you're new here, my channel is not only going to give you piano tips, but also discuss very important music theory concepts, sight reading, ear training, and all other musicianship skills that will be really helpful for learning piano. So feel free to subscribe down below if you like this type of content so you won't miss any new videos. Today, we will be talking about some very important tips for practicing piano. Before we get to how to practice, let's talk about how much you should be practicing. A lot of people ask me this question because they don't know what to expect in order to achieve the progress that they want at the piano. So first things first, there is no set amount that you should be practicing. Of course, if you are trying to become a concert pianist, you should definitely put in at least 3 hours a day and more because there's just so much music to learn and such a high level that you're going to try to achieve. If you're just learning for fun, you can put in as much time as you want, but it's important that it's regular and that it's goal-oriented. Regardless of whether you're playing piano more seriously or just for fun, you have to make sure your practicing is efficient and that you are not practicing any mistakes. Just because you practice 10 hours a day doesn't mean that you're practicing well. You have to make sure that you're not repeating mistakes over and over again and that you know exactly how to problem solve to improve your playing. Sometimes practicing more but practicing incorrectly can actually make you worse at piano playing. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't practice too much, but if you do practice regularly and you practice properly, then you will achieve way better results. My one tip for getting a practice routine would be to figure out when you like to practice. So is it in the morning, the afternoon, evening? What time can you put aside just to spend some time with the piano every single day? And it doesn't have to be a lot, but try to set a goal, maybe a daily goal or a weekly goal. Let's say if you just picked a new piece today, you could say that by the end of the week you want to play both hands together all the way through the piece. And then next week you could say, okay, well, I'm going to bring the tempo up to the final tempo of the piece. You could also set technical goals for yourself. For example, you could play 1 or 2 scales at the beginning of each practice. As Suzuki says, only practice the days that you eat. So if you ate that day, you should be practicing that day too. Now let's talk about some important steps that you should add to every practice session. Number 1. This is one of the practice tips that you probably heard from every music teacher in the universe, and it is to slow practice. Slow practice is important not only because it allows you to have the time to process everything and avoid stumbling over passages, but it also allows you to make some decisions, like for example, choosing a fingering, putting your hands together, and many more good things. Slow practice can even be helpful for pieces that you've already learned. Like let's say you've played this fast piece over and over again in concert, and it starts to get messy. You're going to have to take that tempo down and review it at a slow tempo just for some maintenance and to make sure that it's always sounding as clean as it did previously. The next thing that you should do after your slow practice is to practice at a faster tempo. It could be at your final tempo for the piece, or it could be for tricky passages that you're trying to get as smooth as possible. The reason why we don't want to rely only on slow practice is because what happens when we speed up the tempo is not always what we expect. Sometimes a fingering doesn't work out at a fast tempo. So what you have to do is to choose a different fingering that works at a faster tempo. Another thing that you could do, say for example, if you have a hesitation between 2 places in the music, for example, a leap, like if you're jumping from one place to the next at the piano, then you might want to practice getting there even faster than you need to so that you have this extra space and comfort level with that passage. You should never feel like you're playing as fast as you possibly can. Even if you're playing really fast, you should have a little bit of space that will allow you to play well if you are nervous and you speed up That's why fast practice can be very helpful as well. Step number 3, by starting from the beginning over and over, what you end up doing is you end up practicing the beginning section, let's say 1,000 times. The middle part you'll probably get to 500 times, and then the last part you'll only play 200 times over the course of your practicing. So if that is the case, then you don't know the middle and end as well as you know the beginning section. When you make a mistake later in the piece, I want you to go directly to that mistake and fix it exactly in that bar. And then start from the bar before and the bar before, and eventually add it into the context in which you played it. Starting from different places is also going to help you with your memorizing, because sometimes what happens is that we memorize a piece, we think we know it really well, but then if we stumble in the middle of the piece, we have to be able to continue. And being more familiar with these different starting points can give you a comfort level with your memory that you may not have had if you always start from the beginning. You could also start from places that are not super comfortable places to start, just so your knowledge of the music is even more confident. The next step is to write all your fingerings in with pencil. Pencils are very important because, as we just mentioned, our slow practice fingerings might not apply to our fast practice fingerings. If we need to change the fingering and it's in pen or it's not there, then you end up practicing different fingerings, and that's not consistent and it kind of wastes your practice time. Besides, if you choose a few years down the line to relearn this piece and you have all the correct fingerings written in, you will really thank your old self for adding that in there. You could also use your pencil to write in any reminders or circle all the mistakes that you made so you avoid making them again, because practicing mistakes is a huge time waster. Tip number 5 is to count and use the metronome. Now, I mentioned both counting and using the metronome because they are not substitutes for each other. For example, counting, especially out loud, because then you can really hear what you're saying, and if you're saying something wrong, you will probably catch yourself. Whereas if you're counting just internally all the time, then you will probably miss something. Counting will make sure that your rhythm is accurate, and metronome practice will make sure that your tempo is accurate. When you practice with the metronome, make sure that you also listen to the clicks carefully and make sure you line up with the clicks. The reason why we still need to count is because even though we line up notes with the clicks, it doesn't mean we're lining up the right notes with the clicks, or we could play a completely different rhythm and match up the beat. That's why the combination of metronome practice and counting is really good for you. One of the perks of practicing our rhythm so carefully is that it also fixes a lot of technical problems. I've noticed a lot of times where I fix the rhythm and automatically it fixes the technique of that section as well. Imagine you have a long run and you have many notes ascending and you have one finger that stays on one note too long or too short. Then that will affect the rest of the notes, kind of like a domino effect. By making sure that your rhythm is very accurate, it will also make sure this doesn't happen and ruin any of the technical passages in your music. Now the final step is to record yourself. You don't have to have a fancy recording device. You can just use your phone, iPad, or computer. I want you to listen to how you sound away from the piano, because a lot of the times we don't notice things ourselves while we're learning to listen to ourselves at the piano. Even if you think you're listening to yourself at the piano, there's probably more that you could listen for, and that's something that comes with experience. Because at the beginning, we're so focused on our technique and making sure that we have the right fingering and that we have all the right notes. So sometimes we miss these things and we don't hear our tone, we don't hear our rhythm quite clearly. And using a recording device is really going to help you speed up that process. It'll also help if you use video sometimes, because then you'll catch your posture. For example, if you don't notice that your wrists are really high, or that your elbows are sticking out, or that you're slouching, right? If you can be your own teacher in your practice, that will speed up the process, even if you have a teacher, because all of us teachers want our students to be very critical in their own practice to make sure they catch mistakes on time and that they don't practice mistakes. Anyways, those are all the practice tips I have for you today. I hope that you incorporate some of these in your practicing. I know that some of these require patience, like constantly listening and counting and carefully listening to the metronome, as well as practicing slowly and writing down all the fingerings and choosing fingerings. It is a process, but you can enjoy it and you can definitely improve yourself as a musician by pushing yourself to be patient and trying to do everything properly. If you want more practice tips like this, then leave me a comment, let me know, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.